The nightmare is real, but what blessings could there be in disguise? Where can the Wizards find their star?
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, all, and welcome into Locked On Wizards, where myself and Abdullah Ayubi cheer you up about the pretty painful lottery. And that's our hope, at least, and tell you about the potential newest Wizard who could be a star, even if not picked at number 1 or number 2 like the Wizards had desired. I'm Leif, Thulin, a credentialed NBA draft analyst, attendee of the last 2 NBA combines, host of Locked On NBA Big Board, and beside me is Abdullah Ayubi, a diehard Wizards fan, here to provide hometown insights and passion for his beloved Wizards and tell you who the Wizards should take at number 6. Thanks for making Locked On Wizards your first listen each and every day. And remember, Locked On Wizards is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Wizards, where the best way to help us grow is comment anything below. And today's question I have for you guys is similar to yesterday's. We talked about who's the best pick at 6, but who's got the most potential to be a star. So slightly different. You know, there's boom or bust in this. So let's dive right in. Abdullah, we got to move on that the basketball gods slayed the Wizards to fall to 6. The Jazz fell to 5. All these top teams can be angry with the basketball gods, but we got to come back with a better understanding today on what are the next options for the Wizards. Is there a trade to get them a star? Is there a pick to be there at 6? What's next for the Washington Wizards, and who is going to lead them into the promised land?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I know the basketball gods wasn't on the Wizards' side during that lottery. I mean, it wasn't the first time, but again, not complaining. You get what you get. It is what it is for us Wizards fans. But pick 6, there's a lot of options there. There's a possibility of you packaging 6 and 19, and maybe even a player like Jordan Poole to move up to the top 4. I don't know if I would do that, but again, a lot of possibilities. Like I mentioned not too long ago, Trey Johnson is a guy who I think his ceiling as a scorer is really, really good. The cool, I keep pronouncing his name, but the big man from Duke, Khaman, Maluach. Yeah, I gotta learn these names, man. But he's defensively really up. His ceiling is up there as well. Paint protection. You pair him with Alex Sarr, it'll be a really good front court. Also, Derik Queen, his game offensively. I mean, he really played good last March Madness. Had that game winner. So a lot of options there. VJ Edgecombe might fall to 6. I think if you're the Wizards, you gotta understand that, hey, we didn't get pick 1, we didn't get pick 2, we didn't get pick 3, we didn't even get pick 4. But at the end of the day, you have so much confidence in this front office that they'll still pick a guy where even in last year's draft where they hit on a weak draft, all 3 draft picks, they're definitely going to hit on 6 and 19 for sure.
And that's a great point you just made, that in a weak draft they hit, but I think number 6 in last year's draft could have gone number 2. Like, I don't think Risa, Shea, or Sarr is that much superior to a guy like you mentioned of Queen, Maluach, maybe even a guy like Trey Johnson, who we talked about yesterday, SEC Freshman of the Year. I don't know if it's a certainty that you'd take Sarr or Risa Shea ahead. I personally on my board had Stephon Castle at 1, Sarr 2, and I had Risa Shea at 5. That guy went 1, and I definitely wouldn't have had him 1 in this class, and I definitely wouldn't have had him even top 5. And he's solid, but you found bright spots in a poor draft, so there is a silver lining. I want to bring up a possibility. We'll get back to the draft in a moment, but there are teams that have disgruntled stars on underperforming teams. Is there any world that the Wizards find their star? Because that's what everyone's hoping to do in a draft. That's what they hope that the lottery pans out, that they have their guiding star, the North Star to say, you know what, we're going to follow this to the promised land. But is there a trade possibility for a guy like Trae Young, a Zion Williamson, who are on disgruntled teams that aren't performing as well as you possibly could? Is it the home run and getting Giannis? I don't think you got the ammunition for Giannis, but at the same time, I don't think that the Wizards are lacking for future picks and young talent to offer some of these teams for a slightly more established NBA star, even if not a superstar.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, Leif, because I think right now for the Wizards, especially Zion Williamson, I mean, we all know when he's on the court and healthy and he's playing at his peak, he's really, really good. But I think off the court issues, and again, like being able to maintain his body weight has been a key issue. And come here to DC, there's a lot of restaurants here in DC, so I think that'll be a problem for him. But again, I think down the line, like make that Donovan Mitchell type of move where you have so much young talent and you want to get that one piece to take you to the promised land. I know the Cavs haven't gone anywhere. I know they got eliminated today, which is insane. The Pacers are doing amazing right now, but that's besides the point. I think if you're the Wizards right now, it wouldn't make sense to trade for a guy like Zion Williamson. More putting more emphasis on Zion because, again, the whole off the court issue, you're going to have to give up a lot from a first overall pick. Trae Young, again, I think what Atlanta's doing, I think they're going to be content with him. And I just feel like keep the guys that you have here. No, don't switch up the chemistry. Don't alter it, because I think if in a way, if you bring in a guy like that right now, it just goes to show that, this front office doesn't have confidence in this young core right now. Give it a year or two and then make that trade like that Donovan Mitchell trade where you get that superstar that take you over the leap and make you contender in the Eastern Conference. But I wouldn't be opposed to it, but it just goes back to how much are you giving up, and is it really worth it altering the young timeline that you have here in DC?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective because at the same time, Trae Young, for instance, isn't old. He is difficult to build around because there's not too many teams that are built around a diminutive small guard who's a liability defensively. But at the same time, the dude can score. The guy dishes out assists at an elite rate and really elevates those around him. You look at Tyrese Halliburton. I have two points about Halliburton, like you mentioned, that they're going to the Eastern Conference Finals 2 straight years. Halliburton was traded, so that would be point one. He was traded. It's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Obviously, he was with De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox was with the Kings, and they said, you know what, we can get a guy like Sabonis. But the younger talent went to Indiana, and now they're looking good. So a trade perpetuated a team upward through the Eastern Conference. But secondly, Tyrese Halliburton fell in the draft. I thought I had him number 5 in my draft board that season, and that was a draft board that could have gone everywhere. Everyone had different boards, and maybe I got lucky. But the team, like in the Kings case, it wasn't the Pacers, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder for that reason too, because you can find a guy at 6 like the Wizards have, or as low as Halliburton went, and he turns into a guy that many said overrated, but look, he's got his team back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals out of nowhere. So let's go back to the draft. Who is the guy? And I asked you this similarly yesterday about like who is the best case scenario, but I guess my question is, let's say you don't have to worry about busting. You can just go off potential. Who's the guy that you think has the most franchise-altering potential that can be there at 6 for the Wizards?
For me, it's again, like I mentioned, Trae Johnson, but since I've already given so much Trae Johnson, I want to talk about Derik Queen. I think he could definitely be a guy where you pair him up with Alex Sarr, Derik Queen, 6'10", and could arguably go down as the best big man in the draft. His offensive game is just there, and I think his defense can definitely get better as well. But his ability as a scoring threat, 6'10", average 16.5, 9 rebounds, and 1.9 assists past season with shooting 52.6% from the field. Again, you can be offensively a serious threat. And you pair him up with Alex Sarr, I think they could be an interesting front court. And again, you bring him the hometown kid back. Why not? Why not? He's done on the big stage in March Madness, and you really haven't had a front court like a potential like Alex Sarr and a Derik Queen. So as much as I love Trae Johnson, if you really want to beef up also getting rebounds, the rebounds has been a key issue. I mean, the Wizards have been bottom 5 in rebounding for so many years, and it's just been getting out rebounded every night. It gets frustrating. So if you bring in a guy like Derik Queen, it will definitely help the issue.
Yeah, Derik Queen to me, I would say has the highest ceiling in terms of most likelihood to be a star. We're going to touch on ceiling versus floor, which one is better to attack when you're picking 6. History suggests that picking 6 doesn't always get you an all-star, obviously, but it gets you more than you'd think. I think Queen's got the possibility to play like Alperen Şengün or like the aforementioned Domantas Sabonis, in the sense that he's slow-footed. There might be deficiencies defensively. That's where you trust Alex Sarr's proficiency defensively. And you say, you know what, we're going to trust you and your rebounding ability, your passing, your touch around the basket, and your footwork to be our effective offensive source and someone that we can play through as a distributor and hub offensively. You look at some of these guys. Obviously, Jokic is the prime example, but Sabonis and Şengün have been all-stars and all-NBA level guys in recent seasons. And if you build the team properly around them, like the Kings were not too long ago, a high seed in the Western Conference. And I don't think Sabonis is a top 15 player in the NBA, but I do think there's a pathway for effectiveness in that type of player, despite the limitations defensively. So I'm with you as the highest ceiling. What do you think his highest outcome is? Like, what does it look like, a career trajectory, or even, let's say, by the end of his rookie deal, 4 years from now, what do those stats look like?
Yeah, no, I think if all goes well, I definitely think within maybe year 2 or year 3 can definitely hit that all-star range. Again, it will be difficult with the amount of talent in this league, but I think DQ, I just think, especially since we've lacked such a big man here in DC for so long, Alex Sarr definitely made it known that he got better after every single game. But you pair him with DQ again. I don't know. I don't want to say maybe like at 15-point range his rookie year, if all goes well and he gets better offensively. I think, especially if Coach Keefe decides to run the offense through him and Alex Sarr, I think they could definitely be a really good big man tandem. Not comparing it to DeMarcus Cousins or Anthony Davis, but the way that they can play with each other and complement each other, I think that would be really key. And that's just something, like I mentioned, that hasn't been here in DC for so long. It's never about the young guys, but now you have two young bigs who offensively are going to be really, really good, and defensively they're going to be really, really good as well with the potential. And you pair them up with guys like Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, who are really good high motor guys and also can be really good defenders. I think the sky's the limit for DQ, and I don't see why not at pick 6. It also makes sense because, again, you don't have to trade up for him. I think he's going to be there at pick 6. So, again, it really goes back. It goes back to the Wizards organization, this front office, saying, hey, do you really think we should go with this big man, or do you think we should get a wing, especially if Bilal Coulibaly doesn't take that year 3 jump offensively?
Yeah, we got more on Derik Queen, more on Khaman Maluach, who I think we should talk about them as foils. Queen maybe the highest potential, but maybe Maluach has hidden potential as someone who's seen as a project, but also a high floor. A lot of that debate coming up next on Locked On Wizards. Today, the days are getting longer, the weather's warming up, and people are spending more time outside, which means the perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or a small balcony, Wayfair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. Wayfair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all, and all at prices that fit your personal budget. And you can get a new patio dining set, some string lights from Wayfair, and they help extend your outdoor space and make it look better to have these conversations about who the Wizards should pick. I personally love the styles they offer. Wayfair makes it very easy to find pieces that match your personality, your vibe, without spending a fortune, and that's super important in today's economy. The delivery fee is delivery is free and certainly hassle-free. And even for the big stuff, you can get something huge, a big couch to put on a porch or inside your house, and nonetheless, it is still free and hassle-free. So whether you're entertaining guests or just relaxing solo, shop Wayfair to help you unwind. Shop through a huge selection of outdoor furniture online this summer and get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. All righty, welcome back to Locked On Wizards. Leif Thulin here with Abdullah Ayubi. And we talked about Derik Queen as the guy with the highest potential to be a star. But now let's talk about the benefit and the cost maybe of taking someone with a high ceiling versus someone with a high floor. And I mentioned as we headed to break that a guy like Khaman Maluach was seen as a project. He's raw, he's long, he measured in at over 7 feet, barefoot, crazy long wingspan, 7'7" wingspan, demonstrated a very good shooting touch. There's a surface video that's talking about him hitting 14 straight threes as someone who can play as a drop coverage big, who can make the Wizards front court incredibly formidable defensively, someone who can stretch the floor a little bit and is certainly a great role threat. I've got a stat for you, 99th percentile as a role man in collegiate basketball. That's pretty darn good. So you'd say, is he a high potential guy, a high ceiling guy because he's a bit of a project, he's young, he's a bit raw, but somehow I feel like he's got a high floor too. Am I leading people astray by saying a guy that's a bit of a project has a high floor in the sense that you put him in, the defense is going to be great because he's such a innate, natural defender, someone who can switch on defense and recover or play the more natural big drop coverage, follow the pathway let out by the Cavaliers where the Cavs employ Jarrett Allen to be the Khaman Maluach in this case, and then the more versatile guy who can slide his feet more easily being Evan Mobley, in this case being Alex Sarr. I see a pathway where his floor and ceiling are fairly high, and you're kind of not having to choose, but it's just perceived differently because he's young and he played at Duke and there were other players stealing his limelight. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think defensively, like you mentioned, I think he could be the best defender coming out of this draft. Definitely the best defensive prospect. I think with his mix of length, mobility, finishing, and paint protection at such a young age really makes him a high end prospect. And I think for a lot of teams, especially the Wizards, has been a lot of losing in the paint for so many years as I've been a Wizards fan. And I think you bring in a guy like Malu who can definitely make his presence known, and playing in the big stages of Duke. Again, they didn't win the national championship, but again, playing in a high end program like that definitely and brings your game to a whole different level. And I think rim protection, it's just a guy like him who can protect the rim. It alters team's offensive game because it's going to be hard to get around him and get a shot over him. So I think defensively, I think really high ceiling. Offensively, it's going to be interesting to see. I know you mentioned the 14 threes in a row. That's really cool. I think if you're the Wizards, that is intriguing to look at. But again, like you want to make sure that a guy like him who can be a traditional center like Rudy Gobert or Steven Adams has to also make sure that he has that offensive game, because in today's NBA, a lot of big men are shooting threes now. They're shooting off the dribble. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it's coming down to the draft where teams rank Malu. And I think if you're the Wizards, comparing him to DQ, you got to give offensively the tip off to Derik Queen. But I think if you give him, if you're looking at defense, I think Malu definitely has a higher ceiling than him.
Yeah, and it's interesting in general, regardless if we're talking two centers in this case, which just so happened to be the guy we thought had the highest potential, versus a guy that I think personally has a very high floor in Maluach, but also someone who has a pretty high ceiling if he figures out the offensive game to complement his defensive floor where he's going to be very good. But the general question is, do you think going for a home run at 6 is prudent or going for safety? Because I'm going to give you some history here for Wizards fans. This might not feel good because the 6th pick hasn't yielded great results, but a lot of these guys, I would say, were the ones that have been misses were project type picks versus the ones that have hit have been projected to play roles. So here are the 6 picks recently. Tijon Salam went to the Hornets. Thus far, not particularly impressive of a showing, but too early to determine. Anthony Black's solid for the Magic, but not a home run. Benedict Mathurin has been solid for the Pacers, but I never felt like that was a home run pick. Josh Giddey to the Thunder. He was good, but he obviously didn't fit their timeline. Onyeka Okongwu has become the starting center on the Hawks team that's perennially decent. Jarrett Culver was a bust. Mo Bamba a bust. Jonathan Isaac I actually think is excellent if healthy, but he's never healthy. Buddy Hield's been a journeyman, though prolific for 3. And then Willie Cauley-Stein. However, if you go 3 years beyond that, you go Marcus Smart, who is Defensive Player of the Year 1 year, so very good player, but still role player. Nerlens Noel injured, and then you have Damian Lillard, your first All-Star. So you got to go back a while. You also have Brandon Roy as a hit if you go back 19 years. But my point in saying all that, the ones that I would say had the most success were projected to be guys who excel in a role. Does that give you any pause in trying to hit the home run by selecting a guy like Queen, or maybe you feel wonderfully about someone else? Is there a pick in your mind that fits the boom or bust so much so he scares you away?
No, honestly, I think I have so much confidence in this Wizards team that there's not so much pressure to be that franchise-changing player where it's all the pressure is on you, whether it's Queen, Trey Johnson, or Malu. I think if you're the Wizards, you get a young guy who can definitely help you offensively and defensively, but you also have to realize that you have other young guys, Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, Jordan Poole, I think is on the edge of being at that all-star. So I think when it comes to situation, and a lot of people disagree with me on this, at least I've seen on social media and stuff, I think the Wizards have a really good situation right now because, again, you bring in a young guy who is just, you play your game and you be you. There's no expectations of winning. And that's what makes this Wizards team so nice, is that right now there's not that much pressure on winning a championship. Down the line, a year 2, year 3, or year 4, year 5 of this rebuild, then there's where like, okay, we got to make the plan. We got to make some, we got to be winning 30, 35 plus games. So, but right now, whatever young prospect comes in and gets drafted at 6, or where they move up or move back, there's not that much pressure on them. And that's what makes this an ideal situation for any prospect. So the whole boomer bust thing, I'm not really a fan of it or understand.
Yeah, and so I think that's a good perspective in the sense that the Wizards can afford to go for a swing. I do think there's some statistics indicated in that history. The other history is that there's 20% of 6th picks from 1989 to 2019. If for the everydayers, I mentioned that stat on Monday, but the 6th pick yields 20% All-Star. So that's about what we saw right there. 2 of the 10 in Damian Lillard and Brandon Roy. So it stays true. I think scouting is getting better, so you may find more success more recently. However, you've seen some guys be projects. A guy that I think does fit the boomer bust label, and I think I'd be very curious. I doubt the Wizards would take him because Bub Carrington fits a similar description as a point guard. Pick and roll heavy would be Jeremiah Fears, who I think's got potential if he has the ball in his hands, but he does have some warning signs as an inefficient jump shooter and someone who played on a poor team at Oklahoma and just had the ball in his hands. I think Derik Queen has less warning signs in terms of being a bust, and I do think he has the highest potential. So I think we're on the same page at Queen. If they were to take Maluach, how would you feel, and how do you think most Wizards fans would feel as someone who sees the appeal of the defensive side, but maybe not the long-term upside as a all-star type player, rather more of a Dereck Lively, a Mark Williams, a defensive anchor?
Yeah, no, that's again, like for me, like I think defensively it's just been a common thing that we need to get better here in DC. I think offensively you would like to see that, but if the guy is just so good defensively, I really wouldn't mind because again, you want to get that rim protector, you want to get that guy who can change the game when it matters, that last second block to win the game. So if a guy like Malu and the Wizards organization has so much faith that he could be the guy, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I would be a little bit surprised if he doesn't go in the top 6. I don't know what order, but the draft stock and the community that I speak with seems to think he's rising, and I believe it because the measurables are fantastic. He's going to interview very well. He's one of the happiest, nicest people I've ever, I wouldn't say interacted with, but have seen people interact with. And then I would also say his potential is high, and I believe his floor is high. So the Wizards don't only have the 6th pick. They have the 19th pick. We're going to talk about that and some players that are rising up through the NBA Combine's ranks and potentially putting themselves in the conversation for pick 19. We'll head there next on Locked On Wizards. Shopping for a car should be exciting and not exhausting, but between the confusing prices and the hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. That's why I love using Car Gurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. I definitely needed it when recently shopping for a car. I was going through the rigmarole of listening to one person say one price and then all of a sudden finding a totally different price, but not with Car Gurus. If you need a deal you can trust, Car Gurus makes it easy for it to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. And the best feature, in my opinion, the price drop alerts. So you know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget and you time it to perfection. Plus, the in-depth vehicle details give you peace of mind before stepping onto any lot and being led astray. Fear not about that with Car Gurus. They take great care of you. So buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com and go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.com, cargurus.com. All righty, welcome back to Locked On Wizards. Leif, Thulin, and Abdullah Ayubi. We talked a lot about the high potential picks at 6. Let's talk about the guys who could be there at 19. And I'll start with a similar question. At 19, are you looking for a potential or someone who can just play a role? You want a plug-and-play guy, or are you looking to swing for the fences?
That's again a really good question, Leif. I think if the guy that you think right there that is just so plug and play ready that you're confident, I don't see why not. But I also wouldn't mind if they take a swing on if they go guard with the 6th pick and maybe take a swing on Ozzy Newell, a big man who could definitely is draft stock is going up recently as it's been on draft board. So that could be a guy where, again, if you take a swing on a big man, I don't see why not. Also, Danny Wolf out of Michigan, I think I've been talking about him for a while, but he is like Nikola Jokic 2.0 when it comes to the way he moves offensively. So Danny Wolf at 19, if he's there, I don't see why not. But again, a lot of options, man. This was so great about this Wizards organization that you really have so many options, and whatever way you do it and the way you attack it, I think this front office can definitely hit just because of how the reason why I'm just so confident about them, I think a lot of fans should be, is how they executed last year's draft. So this year's draft in a stronger draft class, pick 19, why not swing and go for a guy? Or even if you want plug and play, I think Danny Wolf can be that guy as well.
Would you have seen Keyshawn George as a swing last year or more of a plug and play? Because I think there was a discourse about him of, oh, this guy's slow-footed and he shot well, but he's old for a freshman. So I thought some people thought he was a swing because he was super talented and had great size. And some people would have told you, oh, this guy's plug and play because he can play pick and roll. And I think finding the middle point's the best. But what was your personal assessment of was he a swing or was he a swing or a bunt, playing it safe, plug and play?
Yeah, I think with Keyshawn, like the 3-point shot, I think that's what we were looking for. But I think if you're the Wizards, I mean, the way he moves defensively, I think that's what's surprising, and he got better as the year went on last year. So if you're the Wizards, and I think the emergence of Keyshawn George is a big reason why Corey Kispert's tenure in Washington is coming to an end. So I think his emergence has been great, and I think I don't know if it's a swing, but I think when it came to him and his playing role, he came through.
Yeah, I liked Keyshawn George a lot. He was, an interesting guy to talk about during the combine. So, with that said, Corey Kispert's tenure probably coming to an end. Do you feel like the wing is the selection? Because if you look at the board, I think the wing is the position that is most conducive to success around that. Because you look at some of the success stories picked, later after the lottery, they're typically wings that are plug and play, either defensively oriented or very good shooters, and you hope for both. There's a guy named Cedric Coward who's taking draft Twitter by storm because he had a 7'2.5" wingspan and shot the cover off the ball to the tune of being top of the leaderboard in the star drill. And he's a guy that fits the athletic and shooting parameters, so maybe offense and defense. There's guys like Yaxel Landenborg, like you talked about, Danny Wolf. There's wings galore in this spot. You've got Will Riley, someone who measured in at nearly 6'9" as a freshman who shoots the cover off the basketball. What direction would you go of these wings, if not a big like Danny Wolf? And does it change if you let's say you take Derik Queen at 6? Do you say, okay, good riddance with Wolf? Or if you take Trey Johnson, do you say you must get a big here? Does the positional need outweigh best player available when picking at 19?
Yeah, and again, I'm always like in the middle between fit and best player available. But I think if you go guard and that in the realm of pick 6, I think you gotta go getting the. For me, I think I have so much confidence in Bilal Coulibaly hitting that year 3 offensive game, averaging more points per game. I think him being more consistent. I think he's going to be able to do that. That's why I'm more. And I wouldn't be so upset if you get Derik Queen and maybe even double down on the center, the big man position, because again, I think if you're the Wizards, they have a good guard rotation and you have a solid wing rotation as well. Obviously, that could get better, but if you want to pair up Queen and Sar, and you also have Tristan Vucevic off the bench, a really good big man rotation potentially for the Wizards if they go double down on big man.
Yeah, my philosophy is that you can get a plug and play wing, and you potentially, if you bank on trades well enough, you might be able to get a steal who could be more than plug and play and exceed expectations. Because, like I mentioned, Cedric Coward's the draft darling of the NBA Combine. There's a guy, like I mentioned, Will Riley is doing very well. There's an international player named Ben Saraf who the Wizards have not shied away from going the international route in seasons past. Does the NBA Combine, guys who play well in the scrimmages that will be happening today, tested well, do those guys who show it allure to you more, or guys who had this collegiate track record and maybe don't play in the scrimmages because they want to hold their stock? Is there anything that changes your perspective in the next couple days?
Yeah, no, I think for me, it's how you performed on the big stage. And for me, I put a little more consideration in the March Madness as well. How did you play? Because that's the biggest stage in college basketball, and when you're in the NBA, it's the best of the best. So I think that goes into consideration. The combine, I agree. The measurements is something to note, but I think a lot of it just goes back to game tape, how you performed when you were given playing time. And if you're the Wizards, again, you want to get that guy who can perform at the big stage, because again, you want him to be that guy that leads you to the promised land, winning a championship here in DC.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this, and I think there's a ton of wings. And if you're to take a wing, let's say you take Derik Queen or Khaman Maluach, and you're looking wing here. I'll give you 4 options. Cedric Coward from Washington State's been the darling of the draft Twitter the last couple of days. Will Riley shot the cover off the ball and shows potential, measuring it at 6'8". You got Rasheer Fleming from St. Joe's, whose wingspan was 7'5". He's the athletic type. Adu Thiero, an athletic type. Maybe a guy like Liam McNeely falls from UConn. Is there a player that stands out there? And the second part of this question would be, do you prioritize athleticism because the Wizards have tons of that and they have in years past, or are you looking more for shooting, especially with the loss, or at least potential loss, of a guy like Corey Kispert?
Yeah, no, I think, man, that's a good question. For me, like, I think right now you want athletes here in DC, and I think shooting wise, you got Keyshawn George, but maybe I think Jordan Poole also is a 3-point sniper as well. Maybe Alex Sar develops a 3-point shot. Maybe even Bilal Coulibaly, if it gets to the mechanics where it develops that 3-point shot. But I think right now you have a good group of athletes. In today's NBA, you want guys that can shoot from three. So maybe lean towards the side of 3-point shooting. And I think a lot of these guys have those high ceilings of being 3-point shooters in this draft. It just again goes back to development. And I think this Wizards coaching staff done a good job of developing the three guys that they got from last year's draft. So I think they can run it back again, especially in a stronger draft class.
Yeah, and maybe they're able to package up 6 and 19, move up if someone falls that they think can truly be the guiding star to the Wizards to the promised land of making the playoffs once again. Well, we certainly hope for the best for the Wizards in this draft. We're going to get you all the insights and coverage you need as the NBA Combine rolls on today and tomorrow. We're going to talk about some of the players, the standouts there, more draft talk, and maybe a little bit of what should the Wizards do in the offseason coming up in the days tomorrow. We really appreciate you guys for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen today. And for your second listen, go check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. By the time that you listen to this, one of the series has finished. The Pacers are in the Eastern Conference Finals, and some of the others could finish as well by the time you listen to this. So thank you guys for listening. We'll be back. See you tomorrow.